All right, guys. Well, hopefully you can hear me. I am Scott Allen, and our company is Oberon Technologies, and today I'm going to be talking about using VR training to make the energy industry cleaner and safer. Some of the ways that we have helped to expand VR in those industries. A little bit about myself. I'm the CIO and CTO of Oberon Technologies. And I also do a lot of the product ownership and the technical implementations. So I've got my hands in a lot of different things. If you've got questions after this, please come up and speak to us at our booth. The company itself, Oberon Technologies, we've been around for 15 years, working in many different industries. Our offerings are mostly around solution providing for, with our consultants that we have. We like to kind of take you through the entire process and work with you to grab the requirements of what you're trying to do before we actually implement anything. But we've got content consulting services, is what we started with. We moved into a delivery solution. So we have a delivery platform that can be used to deliver all kinds of content, but VR and AR is another example of that kind of content that we can deliver. And I'll give you some examples of that in a little bit. And then where we're seeing the most growth is around the immersive VR training. And as you can see from some of the booths that you're seeing out there, it's starting to pick up across the industry. There's plenty of companies working on that kind of stuff. We like to think that we're one of the leaders in that area. So this is the compulsory slide of all the customers that we have. This is not all the customers that we have, but this kind of gives you a cross section of the industries that we play in. What we're going to talk about today is the energy industry and gas, electric, nuclear, which is a burgeoning area that a lot of training is being developed in that because of the safety risks, the security risks, the costs that are associated with making a mistake in those kind of environments. All of our customers are Fortune 2000 customers. They're, as you can see, across a number of different industries. There we go. What we're talking about today is around energy and the complexities that can be in training around getting people up to speed on an industry that is really important to everyone. As this thing says, energy emergencies can impact all of us. We take for granted a lot of what we're dealing with in the energy industry, our gas that's being delivered, our electricity that's being delivered, and all the things that can cause if we don't have access to those. So, we turn on the stove and we make dinner, we sit down and watch Netflix. All of those things, some are more critical than others, but when you have a disruption in those can be dangerous and sometimes, life-threatening. And so the industry itself is looking for innovative ways to train people in the steps and procedures that they need to go through when emergencies do arise. And most of the time we don't think about those things until we see a news story that, something bad happens, like the weather in Texas last winter, things like that. They bring forward the fact that it's very important that there's no disruption to the different methods of energy delivery. And like the gas network of pipelines, you were talking about hundreds of thousands of miles of gas lines that are out there, and you have something go wrong in those areas, whether it be in a neighborhood or to a distribution pipe, it can really impact people. And here we're, if you have a fire you've seen in the news recently with some of the issues with the wildfires. I live in Colorado, so that is something we experience quite often. As a matter of fact, we just recently had smoke from the Canadian wildfires. But those things can cause disruptions in energy delivery that it's hard to simulate when you're dealing with some kind of training that's in a controlled environment, or even training out in the field when you don't have those additional aspects of dealing with fire, smoke, causing it to be hard to see, and those kind of things. And as I mentioned, the environmental challenges that occur with those wildfires, droughts, floods, again, a lot of those scenarios are ones that they have to train for, they have to create emergency plans for, but they can't actually get people to experience them because they don't have the environments to be able to kind of go through that. And they look for novel ways of doing that, but it's still not the same thing as being there and actually experiencing it. So then you compound that with the workforce challenge. There's, especially in the energy industry, there's a issue with an aging workforce. You've got a lot of people close to retirement. You have the pandemic that actually led to a number of people retiring early or being asked to retire early. And those kind of things obviously compound the problems that the energy industry is dealing with. And on top of that, many younger people do not feel that the energy industry is as sexy, it's not as interesting, and so it's hard for them to get that talent, especially with their classic way of training. And the younger generation doesn't quite learn that way. They're not going to, you hand them a 200-page manual, they're going to hand it right back to you. They're not going to they're not going to go through that. So you got to find innovative ways of dealing with that. And they're facing, on top of this, they're also facing pressure to put in place preventative measures, emergency plans, to be able to deal with those things, while they're also dealing with the fact that a lot of their knowledge share is aging out and disappearing. So it's important that, I think that's picked me up too, that they're able to recruit and retain new talent. And so that's another area where VR is, they're looking to VR as being a way to bring those people into the fold. And then the other thing is continuous training. If you think about the training facilities that they have out there, generally you have to travel to them, especially like in the nuclear industry. If you're going to be working on something that is similar to what you'll be working on the job, you're going to have to go to a training facility. So you've got the travel costs and all the other things associated with that, and maintaining the facility and having access to it. Well, if they're needing to continuously develop and test on these new technologies, it's very difficult to keep them up to date. So having something where they can experience it over and over again is pretty critical. Workforce safety, obviously, in these industries, you're dealing with high voltage, you're dealing with radioactivity, pressure situations with steam and stuff. So you've got a very hazardous environment that you're needing to train people on, and you've got the added difficulty of the fact that the trainees that you are able to get are very young and not able to get up to speed quickly. So you don't really want to bring them into those environments. So what's needed? You want to have field personnel who are familiar with the exact equipment that they'll be using out in the field. That is something that VR is capable of doing. We have environments that the same module that is used for training could also have specific tools to the gas company or electric company that is using that training, so that they're actually training on something that's similar to what they'll be training on out in the field, instead of something that may be being used in a training facility. You also want to have people who are clear on the step-by-step procedures that are required in an emergency plan. So you can create scenarios that are step-by-step in line with what their emergency plans are. And then you also want to have people that are experienced in identifying hazards that might occur in the field. So as I mentioned before, you could create scenarios that you would never be able to recreate in the real world safely, and sometimes at a really high cost. So you want to be able to give them those scenarios so that they can experience them and be able to work through whatever those scenarios are. And then you want to have people who are aware of the location of the critical equipment in the facility. An example of that is the nuclear industry. Many times when they're planning an outage, they're on a timer when they're doing the outage. So they have to know where the equipment is, what equipment they're bringing in, what equipment they're actually accessing. And you want to make sure that they're fully versed in what that is before they actually shut down the plant. So this gives you the opportunity to do that. And then you want to have people who are able to clearly communicate with emergency services, with the public. So you can give them scenarios where they have to go and talk to in VR, a non-player character. So you've got people in there that might be ignition sources. They might be, mowing their lawn. They might be smoking a cigarette. And you have to go over and tell them, you put that away. So again, it gives them a scenario that is more typical to what they would see in the real world. So having well-trained personnel with these skills can be the difference between an urgent issue and a catastrophe. You want to make sure that you've got that capability of handling anything that can come up. Then the abilities that you want out of those trainees is you want them to be able to quickly assess and communicate the nature of the issue. So you can create scenarios and modules that run them through that, interacting with the emergency staff that's on scene, or even calling in emergency staff, dealing with the media, getting people at a safe distance. You want to have timely decision making. So when you're creating these scenarios, you also have the ability to track everything that's happening in that experience. So you can see how quickly they were able to respond to it. Did they go off script? Did they move into an area where it was dangerous for them? So you have the ability to track all of that and follow up with them. And they also have the ability to run through those scenarios multiple times. Then you can have reactions to abnormal operating conditions, things that, again, would be very difficult to create in a power plant safely. You can actually create those scenarios and then allow them to run through that so that they can experience things that they normally would not experience on the job. The accuracy of identifying properly marking locations. You've got a gas company that's out there, digging, and you could have damage to property. You could have damage to the pipeline itself. So you can allow scenarios that give them a judgment call on, is this too close to, some other service that's there that it could cause damage or could create a hazardous situation. And then the use of industry-specific tools that they'll have in the field. So you can create a large library of tools that they would potentially interact with, and then have scenarios, variable scenarios that they can work through, that each time they go through the training, they may have a different thing that they're having to deal with. And then properly completing the steps in an emergency plan. As I mentioned before, having that emergency plan and then being able to walk them through those steps and make sure they do it in the right order, that they're doing the right things at the right time. Did they hesitate? All of those things can be done in VR. So just to kind of wrap that piece of it up, the VR training provides safe, innovative alternatives, a fully immersive, photorealistic environment. And for those of you who have been in VR, if you do a good job of creating the environment to be photorealistic, it really feels like you're there. You can deal with things like, the flight, being freezing or flying from a situation, going up on a tall ladder. You'd be surprised at how many people get into those environments, and even though it's VR and they know it's not real, they get up on that catwalk and they freeze. And you can identify some of those things before you actually spend the time to get somebody out in the field and find out that it's just not going to work out. You can leverage real-world scenarios. You can dip into that aging workforce and use them to help provide those scenarios that they've experienced and create options within the module that that they could end up having to go through, that maybe a once-in-a-lifetime type thing. And then you could report the analytics, capturing user data, all kinds of information and scoring that you can do off of that. And then there's the shared knowledge. Because you're building these environments, for example, with the Gas Technology Institute, they're across lots of different gas companies. So you've got similar tools, you've got similar scenarios, and although those scenarios may be slightly different from one gas company to another, they're similar enough that a lot of those environments can be reused and can swap out. One of the things with our technology is we have the ability to link in to external data. So you've got standard operating procedures, diagrams, schematics, things that you are maintaining outside of your VR. You can link those in, and then when you change them in the real world, the next time somebody goes into a VR environment, they would have access to that updated information. Or if it's a different company that has different procedures, they could see those different procedures instead of seeing the original company's information. As I mentioned, you can capture the senior workers, using them to help train one time by creating those scenarios and not having to go through and train a bunch of people. They create those scenarios, and then those people can then run through those scenarios whenever they want to, and as they add new people on into the company. I mentioned sharing the common library of virtual environments or components. You can configure courses to fit your exact environments and needs. And then you can leverage those same VR environments that we're creating. You can also leverage those for what we call 3DI, 3D interactive, but it's like a CBT, more of a 2D, so that you don't need to have VR equipment, but you're using the same source files to create that data. So you're not having to reinvent the wheel and create a whole new environment. So let me really quickly show you a video. This is going to kind of walk you through some of the things that we have. This is the lobby environment. This can be customized and show different things. Tour, train, test. We have the ability to kind of walk people through it, train them in it, or test them, and so it gives them the kind of the flexibility to do those different things. Also, you can pick those different scenarios. Different things that might be in there. You can randomize all of those things. You can create incidents in certain locations based on what you can also train in multiple environments, whether it be a cityscape or a residential, for example. You've got a number of things here that you could train on. This is the like appliance lighting, if you're going into a house, or inside meter, all of those things can be done. Personal protective equipment, you can check to make sure that everyone is wearing the proper gear, and then kind of walk them through this and tailor it to whatever the company's requirements are. Communicating with the individuals that are with the emergency services or in the houses. You can go and knock on doors and make people leave the area. So you can see there's a number of different scenarios that you can build here. And then you can randomize those scenarios each time a student comes into it so that they don't get the same training every time. This is where you can pick the different tools. You've got the orange cones that you can lay out there. Another tool that this is for the gas industry when they're testing it, the bar hole tool can take you through and allow you to test for where you may have gas leaks, and you can create a grid of that so that when they use the bar hole tool, they're able to kind of walk, and you can see we're creating places where we can actually test for the gas that might be coming up. So then we can go back in here and we can pick a tool that is specific to whoever the customer is, and then they can go through and test that, and we can use our own scoring system to check to make sure that they checked at least a certain number of places, or that they got the right percentage of gas. This is showing you the Pico headset. We also port to that, and this is multiplayer. You can bring an instructor in, and you can have people all over the country, and they can experience the same thing at the same time. You can walk them through all of the different aspects that they would do on the job, walking them through with an instructor. So you don't need to bring everybody out to a central location. As I mentioned, you can engage with the NPCs and give them commands, getting them to leave the area, or bringing in emergency services if needed. And then once you end the session, you're able to, so this is the actual portal. You can run it from here, but you can also go through and add additional content here, and then you can run through the scoring after that's done. There's also a review mode that allows you to kind of move through the different aspects that you went through and show you what you did right and what you did wrong. So it kind of gives you the freedom to allow them to do these same things over and over again, experiencing a slightly different scenario, but then seeing how they're doing on it, and allows them to practice without any kind of safety issues. This is another one for a nuclear plant. Again, this is a scenario where it's familiarization is what you want. You want them to be very familiar with the plant, and when you're working in the nuclear industry, going into those plants, you're going to potentially be irradiated while you're in there. So being able to see the actual plant that you'll be working in, walk through, experience the tight spaces, as I mentioned, the heights, the confined spaces, those things you don't necessarily know until you get somebody out there. You can simulate some of that, and there are studies on the real world reactions that you'll get from people that experience the VR. So I'll run through this really quickly because I think I am running low on time. I don't want to gloss over this, but one of the things that we focus on is ROI. Reducing costs, avoiding expensive equipment, travel expenses, physical setups, avoiding the need for on-site trainers, employees learning at their own pace, reducing the training time, eliminating risk, safe and controlled space for employees to learn and practice without exposing themselves to real-world risks, experiencing high-risk situations in a simulated environment, reducing the likelihood of accidents and injuries, and then recruiting, as we talked about with that aging workforce, being able to showcase the energy sector's unique environments and their job roles so that you can attract that new talent. Being able to give virtual tours of the facilities that they'll be working in so that they have an understanding of what's going on there, and attracting and engaging candidates, particularly the younger generation who are familiar with immersive technologies and are attracted by immersive technologies. And then upskilling, simulating complex procedures, no interruption to real-world operations, being able to capture that knowledge with the tracking that we do and the reporting, and having experienced workers record their expertise and best practices. And overall, with the ability to customize and the unlimited scenarios that you can make, it really makes sense. And we've seen a lot of adoption because of that, because they're looking at this as not just what's next, but what they really need to do to attract that new workforce and kind of move forward. This is just a real quick list of efficiencies and intangibles that you also get from this, in addition to the ROI. Providing user experience in hours, freedom to fail without risk, increased retention, improved readiness, identify problems early, screen staff for environmental issues, repeatable courses and reusable components, and optimizing use of trainers' time. And as I mentioned, our online delivery platform allows you to put that right at their fingertips. They can run it directly from wherever they are in the country. So to wrap up, more effective training saves critical minutes in the field, which can make all the difference in the safety of energy workers in our communities. And is it time to start your VR training program? So we are actually at booth 705. If anyone has any questions around this or wants to kind of delve further into the customers that we have or the use cases that we're actually providing solutions for. But I thank you all for coming here today, and I hope you have a great expo.